Most people think manipulation is loud, fast talkers, smooth words, clever arguments, but the most dangerous manipulation technique is silent. Silence creates psychological tension, and tension is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Most people are addicted to filling space. They explain too much, they justify too much, they respond too quickly, and without realizing it, they give away their power. But the person who understands silence understands control. When you stop reacting instantly, when you let a moment breathe, when you allow your words to become rare instead of constant, something shifts in the dynamic. The other person starts leaning in. Their mind begins to race. They start asking themselves questions you never had to say out loud. Human psychology is uncomfortable with uncertainty. The brain is wired to seek closure. When there is a gap in communication, the mind rushes to fill it. And here's where silent manipulation quietly begins. When you don't immediately respond to a comment, a message, or a challenge, the other person begins to analyze your silence. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Are they losing interest? That internal dialogue creates emotional tension, and emotional tension creates focus. Suddenly, their attention is no longer scattered. It's locked onto you. The powerful part is this: you didn't attack, you didn't argue, you didn't persuade. You simply withheld reaction. Silence forces people to confront their own insecurities. It magnifies their thoughts. In many cases, they will correct themselves, soften their tone, or seek your approval without you ever demanding it, because the discomfort of uncertainty pushes them to restore balance. And the easiest way to restore that balance is by trying to regain your response. There's also an authority effect hidden inside silence. Confident people don't rush to defend themselves. Leaders don't panic in conversation. When you stay calm and quiet under pressure, you signal emotional control. And emotional control signals dominance. The person who remains composed while others scramble for validation naturally appears higher in status. Silence becomes a display of strength, not weakness. But this technique only works when it's intentional. Passive silence is different from strategic silence. Strategic silence is controlled, measured, and deliberate. You're not ignoring randomly. You're choosing when to speak and when to let the weight of the moment settle. When someone challenges you and you pause before responding, that pause builds suspense. It makes your eventual words feel heavier, more important, more impactful. And here's the deeper layer: tension increases attraction. Whether in social settings, relationships, or negotiations, a slight emotional gap creates intrigue. If everything is predictable, there is no excitement. But when your reactions aren't immediate, when your presence isn't constantly available, you become harder to read. And what's hard to read becomes fascinating. The person who speaks less often controls the emotional temperature of the room. They observe more, they reveal less, they let others invest first. And in that investment, people attach themselves. Silence is not emptiness. It is pressure, it is mystery, it is leverage. And the moment you master it, you realize something powerful: whoever is comfortable with silence rarely loses control. Most people are unknowingly addicted to validation. They look for it in compliments, quick replies, smiles, approval, and attention. It feels small, almost harmless, but validation is psychological fuel. When you give it freely and constantly, you lower your perceived value. When you control it, you increase your influence. The power of withholding validation is not about being rude or cold. It's about understanding that attention is currency, and currency only has value when it is limited. Think about how people behave when they are praised all the time. The praise becomes normal, expected. It loses its impact. But when approval becomes selective and rare, it becomes meaningful. The human brain is wired to chase rewards, especially unpredictable ones. This is the same principle used in casinos and social media. When validation is inconsistent, it becomes addictive. The uncertainty makes the brain release more dopamine. The person starts trying harder, investing more energy, seeking the next moment of approval. When you don't immediately compliment, don't instantly reassure, don't constantly show excitement, something subtle happens. The other person begins to question where they stand with you. And that question creates emotional movement. They start adjusting their behavior to win your attention back. They become more engaging, more attentive, more invested. Without demanding anything, you shift the dynamic so that they are the ones seeking your reaction. This works because humans fear rejection and crave belonging. When validation feels slightly out of reach, it triggers a deep desire to secure connection. The key is subtlety. You don't withdraw completely. You simply become selective. You reward effort, confidence, and value, not basic presence. When someone makes a strong point, then you acknowledge it. When someone genuinely impresses you, then you show appreciation. But you don't hand out approval for free. There is also a status signal hidden in this behavior. High-value individuals are not desperate to please. They don't overpraise. They don't over-encourage. They observe first. When you withhold validation strategically, you communicate that your approval must be earned. And what must be earned feels valuable. People respect what they have to work for. Over time, this creates a powerful shift. Instead of you chasing connection, others begin chasing your recognition. Instead of you proving yourself, they start proving themselves to you. The psychological balance tilts quietly, and the most powerful part is that it happens beneath the surface. No confrontation, no argument, just controlled distribution of attention. Attention is emotional leverage. The moment you realize that not reacting, not praising, not validating instantly can reshape behavior, you understand the deeper layer of influence. People don't value what is constantly available. They value what feels selective, what feels rare, what feels slightly out of reach. And when your validation becomes rare, your presence becomes powerful. Instant reactions may feel natural, but they are often a trap. Responding too quickly signals emotional availability, eagerness, or even desperation. In contrast, a strategically delayed response shifts the psychological balance. When you take a moment before replying, whether in conversation, text, or social interaction, you create a subtle tension that draws attention. The other person's mind begins to fill in the gap, overanalyzing every possibility. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Why are they not responding? That uncertainty pulls their focus toward you, and their imagination begins doing the work for you. Delayed responses are not about being cold or rude. They are about creating mental space that your presence alone occupies. Humans are wired to seek patterns and closure. When your response is intentionally withheld, it forces the other person's brain to chase understanding. This chase builds emotional attachment without you ever saying a single persuasive word. Their thoughts spiral around you, and their attention narrows like a spotlight. Suddenly, you are the center of their mental world. The power of delay is amplified by consistency. If every interaction is immediate, predictability dulls impact. But when responses vary, sometimes immediate, sometimes thoughtful, sometimes silent, the mind struggles to anticipate, heightening curiosity and engagement. Over time, this intermittent pattern creates what psychologists call variable reinforcement, a deeply addictive cycle. People begin to unconsciously seek your attention because they never know exactly when or how it will come. There's also a hidden status element. Those who can wait and observe demonstrate self-control and emotional mastery. In social hierarchies, calm composure signals higher value. By resisting the urge to respond instantly, you communicate authority and confidence without uttering a single boastful word. The pause itself becomes a display of power, making every eventual reply feel heavier, more significant, and more memorable. Ultimately, strategic delay is more than a communication tactic. It is a psychological lever. It quietly manipulates attention, enhances perceived value, and intensifies curiosity. Those who master the art of timing understand that words alone are not always what influence others. Sometimes, silence and patience are the most potent forms of persuasion. The moment you grasp this, you control the pace of interaction, shape perception, and guide behavior, all while remaining seemingly effortless and composed. Emotions are the language of the mind, and how you display or withhold them can completely shift the power dynamic in any interaction. Most people wear their emotions on their sleeve. They react instantly to every comment, every tone, every glance. But in dark psychology, emotional neutrality is a weapon. When you maintain calm and unreadable composure, you create a psychological puzzle for others. They want to understand you, predict you, and unlock the reactions you carefully conceal. The harder you are to read, the more their brain invests in figuring you out, and investment builds value. Controlled emotional neutrality is not about being cold or uncaring. It is about deliberately managing the information you reveal. Every subtle reaction, every tiny shift in expression can be calibrated to manipulate attention. When you remain calm while others panic or overreact, you signal authority without saying a word. People naturally defer to those who appear in control, and control is magnetic. By not giving away your emotions freely, you become the anchor in the interaction, the one others look to for cues, approval, or leadership. Humans are wired to solve mysteries. When you remain emotionally neutral, you become a puzzle. They begin to notice patterns, read into small gestures, and anticipate your next move. That anticipation keeps them engaged, focused, and mentally invested. Emotional neutrality amplifies curiosity and subtly guides behavior. People adjust their tone, choice of words, and actions around you without realizing they are doing it, simply because they are trying to decode your responses. The ultimate power of this technique lies in its subtlety. You never force the interaction. You never overplay your influence. You simply maintain composure, allow the other person to reveal themselves first, and let your quiet control shape the flow of conversation. Over time, your presence becomes authoritative, intriguing, and psychologically commanding. People begin to chase your approval, mimic your behavior, and invest emotionally, all because you mastered the art of remaining emotionally neutral while holding invisible power. Controlled emotional neutrality turns every interaction into a stage where you are the silent director. You influence perception without speaking, guide behavior without instructing, and create attraction without appearing eager. It is one of the most underestimated yet dangerous tools in dark psychology. And the moment you understand it, you realize that the mind reacts far more to subtle emotional signals, or their absence, than to any overt action. Silence and subtle withdrawal create a psychological effect that most people don't even realize is happening. Humans are wired to fear loss far more intensely than they desire gain, and the moment they sense that access to you might be limited, their attention sharpens. This principle underlies some of the most powerful techniques in dark psychology. By becoming slightly unavailable, emotionally, socially, or even physically, you trigger an instinctive need in others to secure what they perceive as slipping away. That fear of losing access pushes them to invest more, chase more, and focus more on you. It's not about being cruel or manipulative for the sake of it. It's about understanding the invisible levers of attention and desire. When you subtly pull back, you create a vacuum that the other person unconsciously rushes to fill. They start seeking reassurance, approval, and connection with greater intensity than before. Even small hints of unavailability, pausing before replying, being less reactive, or showing slight emotional distance, can make them overanalyze, strategize, and prioritize you without ever realizing they are being influenced. This technique works because scarcity amplifies value. What is rare is precious, and what is slightly out of reach feels worth pursuing. By carefully managing how much of yourself you reveal or how quickly you respond, you shift the dynamic from being pursued to being pursued after. The mind naturally seeks closure and certainty, and when you introduce the slightest element of doubt about availability, you create motivation. People begin acting in ways that align with your interests while believing they are doing it themselves. The psychological weight of this method is subtle but potent. It doesn't rely on direct control or overt persuasion. Instead, it leverages instinctual human tendencies, fear of loss, need for connection, and desire for certainty. Over time, this creates influence that feels effortless. Those around you adjust their behavior to maintain access, respect your presence, and remain attentive. The moment you grasp this, you understand a fundamental law of human interaction. What is slightly unattainable commands attention far more than what is always available. By mastering this principle, you quietly control the emotional and behavioral landscape of your relationships. People invest in you, notice your absence, and value your presence more. All because you understand how to balance availability with subtle withdrawal. This is one of the most powerful tools in dark psychology. The fear of losing access, when wielded strategically, becomes a silent magnet that draws others toward you, making them more attentive, more respectful, and more influenced than any overt action ever could. Perception is reality, and the moment people start interpreting your silence, you control the story without saying a word. Every gesture, every pause, every measured absence becomes a signal that your mind is operating on a different level. People begin projecting their desires, fears, and assumptions onto you, filling in the blanks themselves. And the more they imagine, the more invested they become. What you don't reveal becomes far more influential than what you do. This works because humans have a natural need to make sense of uncertainty. When you withhold reaction, you force them to construct narratives about your intentions. They analyze your behavior, replay interactions in their mind, and try to predict your next move. Each silent moment becomes a stage for their imagination, and imagination, once engaged, creates obsession. They don't even realize that the fixation originates from you, because it feels self-generated. Strategic silence also amplifies authority. People instinctively defer to those who remain composed under pressure. When you do not react to provocations, challenges, or manipulative attempts from others, you silently signal power. Emotional restraint becomes a form of dominance. The more people try to elicit a response from you, the more your influence grows, because control is always more persuasive than force. The beauty of this technique is its invisibility. Unlike overt manipulation, it leaves no evidence of coercion or strategy. You simply exist in a way that guides perception, subtly shaping behavior through absence, restraint, and psychological pressure. Those around you become active participants in their own influence. They adapt, conform, and invest energy without realizing you never asked for it. When mastered, this form of silent manipulation turns everyday interactions into a psychological stage where you set the rules without saying a single word. Attention, respect, desire, and compliance all begin to gravitate toward you naturally. In dark psychology, the greatest power lies not in force, persuasion, or words. It lies in the spaces you leave blank, the pauses you create, and the silence you command. The world reacts to you not because you demand it, but because your silence makes them do it themselves.